The retirement requirement. What is the thing that you cannot, or at least should not, avoid doing when you retire? That thing is a life review. Life review. What is the purpose of a life review? Its purpose is to reveal what has changed and what needs to change. This is a transitional point in your life, a transitional time, which may actually take quite a while to unfold. It's a major transition in one's life that has to do with much more than simply rearranging one's finances. So a life review, a very conscientious and detailed life review, assists a person in observing, discovering, revealing what things have already changed irrevocably, perhaps, and what things still need to be changed by conscious effort. One of the first things that needs to be examined is one's expectations. The expectations of, say, health. Maybe your health has been very stable and good throughout your life, but once you start going through this transition, that may change. There's the expectation of your financial stability. That is going to shift. There is the expectation around your strength. There is very little that you can do about the fact that after a certain point, a number of years, one's strength begins to fail, begins to diminish. There are changes that happen in the body, and regardless of whatever efforts one makes to remain healthy and take care of oneself, these changes, they just happen. A person starts losing strength, and for myself, I exercise every day. I do, on average, 200 push-ups, and also I have an exercise room, but that doesn't keep me from observing that I cannot lift what I used to be able to lift even a few years ago. Your expectations of how you're going to spend your time, how you're going to spend your time once you retire, and once you go through this transition, they're going to be different than how they were before. In a way, you would think you will have more time, and you do have more time to perhaps use as you choose if you're not working an 8-to-5 job. But that time should be filled up with other useful activities. Otherwise, you're going to be one of these people who just goes downhill because they don't have their job anymore. One's own view of themselves will change. You look in the mirror and you see gray hairs or white hairs. You see a face that doesn't look like the youthful face of pictures from 10 or 20 years ago. Your appearance changes, your habits begin to change. How you feel about yourself consequently begins to change too. Within, you may think, I'm still a youth, I'm still vibrant. But on the outside, your body begins to tell a somewhat different story, regardless of what you may wish to believe. Perhaps your eyesight is getting weaker. Perhaps your hearing is diminishing. Another thing that will have to be looked at is your habits. Habits that in times past worked, that were useful, may not be anymore. They may have served their purpose and be detrimental. You may need to develop new routines that serve your changing state of life. You may need to sleep more or sleep less. You may need to take more quiet time. You may need to take more time for resting, for reading, for rejuvenating, for exercising. Yes, for exercising. You definitely should take more time for that, because that's very important to try to counteract as much as possible, or to mitigate the decline in muscular strength that is very prevalent at that time. You may want to downsize. You will probably feel that with this point in life coming on, you don't need to acquire, as you did earlier, perhaps the reasons that you had for acquiring things earlier, perhaps to support yourself and members of the family in some way. Those reasons aren't valid anymore. That support isn't required, and you do not need all the substance. You do not need all the stuff that you used to have. In fact, it may be burdensome. It may be clutter. So you may wish to downsize, gift things away. You may want to tithe to your church more. You may want to throw out clothes that are no longer appropriate. You may want to stop eating certain foods that don't reflect your new level of what your body really needs, because you will actually need less food as you grow older. It may need better food of a certain kind, but it won't need as much food to maintain its metabolism. You may want to downsize with regard to financial assets. You don't need them perhaps anymore, or you don't need as many as you did. There is certainly a mindset that believes that you have to have X number of dollars, millions or hundreds of thousands, in order to retire comfortably. I personally challenge that. I don't think that's true. I think it's in God's hands how much you really need, and if a person trusts that his or her life is in God's hands, then it's not quite so important or necessary to be worried about that. I once worked with a man who was a little amusing. He was a very burly guy, and he liked to boast of how fit he was. He told us that he went to the gym early every morning before work, and that after work he also went to the gym, and he would loudly proclaim, "I refuse to get old." That's a fantasy. That's a fantasy that no one can afford to maintain always, because age happens, and age happens for a reason. We're not meant to stay on this earthly life forever, or even the hundreds of years as some of the ancient peoples were able to do. Another thing that should be part of your life review is reflecting on the fact that your circle of acquaintances, which includes your family and friends and others that you know, gradually becomes smaller the longer that you live. Some of them start dying off, and you find that you have fewer and fewer people with which to share your friendship, your experience of life. Along with that, when you see acquaintances, friends, family members going the way of all flesh, and you think, when is this going to happen to me? What do I need to be doing in view of that? For me, I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I take that to quite literally mean it's a transition to the next life, which is the life that this life is a preparation for. And therefore, everything that we do in this life, as much as possible, as much as our strength allows, should be consciously in preparation for that life, because that life does not end like this one does. It never ends. So that life that is to come is the important one. This one here is merely the jumping off place into that one. Kind of along the lines of that train of thought, another thing to examine in this life review is, what do you believe? Do you believe that after this life there is a continuation of an even more glorious life? Or do you believe that at death nothing remains? There are people in both camps. And what you believe about this will, of course, inform what you were doing now beforehand. So you can ask yourself, you should ask yourself, whatever your beliefs on this topic are your beliefs sound? Are they the best possible choices for you? Or are you just believing what is convenient and what the materialistic, worldly milieu that we're in would have you believe? If your beliefs are not sound, what can you do to change them? What can you do to improve your condition at this time? We were saying earlier that things you can do to improve your condition are exercise, good eating habits, good sleep and rest habits, and maybe not doing some of the things that are clearly detrimental. But what one believes, truly believes, not just intellectually agrees with, but truly believes within the heart, this affects much more. This is much more to the point, especially at this time in your life, transition and going through a life review. So are your beliefs sound? If they're not, do you want to change them? How can you go about changing them? Because that's a matter of life or death, really. And change is only possible now. Change is not possible later. Later, everything's baked into the cake. Only now, in this life, is any kind of change possible. This is it, the retirement requirement. Do a life review. Look at what is completed and what you can close the door on, saying, this is finished, I don't need it anymore. And look at what still needs to be done. There's an open door there. Look at what you can begin and start doing it.